this is fantastic. How cool would this be for a classroom to have and experience aquaponics? Not at that point, it was experience plant life and the symbiosis and the recirculation and just so much. Just instantly, I could see that it tied into experiencing life. So whatever you're learning in school is how to prepare you for life.
Welcome to Visionary Aquaponics, a podcast dedicated to inspiring a global aquaponics movement for food freedom, water wisdom, and permaculture-inspired aquaponics. Keep listening for the best advice from the world's pioneers and visionaries in backyard and commercial aquaponics. And now, here's your host, Maribou Latour.
So I really want to know about you personally and tell us about your business with aquaponics.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, I'll try to keep this as summarized as possible because I know there's a lot of things you want to talk about today. Personally, I stumbled into aquaponics about 5 years ago, really starting from wanting to create a charter school. So I've been disillusioned by education. The big step was when I moved from Colorado to California. And just one piece of that showed me just how education's different, right? Moving from one place to another is eye-opening as far as being able to compare that things are different depending on where you live. In Colorado, there was 8 classes a day for high school. And there was a requirement of 1 semester of PE to graduate, right? So I'm just talking about like priorities of education here. Come out to California and we get 6 classes a day. And in the 4 years, and you have to take 2 years of PE credits. It just showed that, there's some of the different priorities and how things got selected in these different states. And it was frustrating. I was taking calculus and physics my senior year. I'm captain of the wrestling team. I'm warming the bench for the football team. So I'm pretty active, right? And so I petitioned because I moved out here my junior year, which means basically for my rest of my 2 years, the best years of my high school where I'm really doing something, I would have had to take one of my 6 classes as PE. And I got it negotiated down, but I basically had to drop out of calculus to take PE to graduate. I'm upset with education. I go to college. I go to a bunch of different colleges, junior colleges, and protest. This was during WTO 1988, 1999, right? So I'm not satisfied becoming aware of global situations and expanding as you grow, as one does. And I also participated in a social justice program at San Jose State called INVEST, International National Volunteer Service Training. And this all leads to the aquaponics because this is significant. You asked if I wanted to change the world with aquaponics. I've been working up to this moment all my life, so to speak. And that's so cliche. That program exposed me to a number of things, and I'd love to talk about that another time. In inequalities in people in life and the globalization and how that impacts things, which is also significant with aquaponics, is the diversification of it. So I wanted to create in my own school. That's how I was going to make a difference. And I wanted to do that for a long time. I'm researching community, gardening, and technology. I was actually at school for a fine art degree in digital media. Researching, finally, 5 years ago, I sat down to do the curriculum and what would this school look like? And I came across the typical standard video of an IBC tote aquaponics system. I was like, this is fantastic. How cool would this be for a classroom to have and experience aquaponics, or not at that point, it was experience plant life and the symbiosis and the recirculation and just so much. Just instantly I could see that it tied into just, experiencing life. So whatever you're learning in school is how to prepare you for life. Whether it's chemistry, physics, problem solving, it's to prepare you for life. Like, I love talking through this with people. It evolves each time. And after that moment of the Discovering Aquaponics as this teaching tool, we got pregnant with our 3rd and 4th daughters. So we have 2 daughters already, right? And then we got twins coming on the way.
Wow.
And by the way, I'm working at Apple at this time. So I'm in the Apple stores. I'd been there for 8 years. At this point, 7 or 8 years. So I had a wonderful experience and just exposed to so many talented people. And now we're going to have 4 daughters. So what are we going to do to support that family? That's my next generation. And here's this moment of teaching. But I also now need to do 4 cars and 4 colleges and 4 weddings. And I'm like, okay, can I do that with the school? The promise that's put out there of aquaponics being this magical agricultural technology revolution with production that's just way off the charts, right? With such little resources. That's the message you get exposed to in a lot of cases, especially 5 years ago when it was just starting to be shared. So I jumped into business school, right? Full-time job, growing family, why don't I go back to school? So I did for strategic leadership to develop Aquaponics business plan. I've seen since then so many people through my journey go through this similar story. It's such a common story, right? IBC tote video. Okay, it's going to be magical. Okay, I'm going to quit my job and like start a farm and feed my neighborhood, and that's going to sustain me and my dreams. Mm-hmm. And mine has twisted along with some very fascinating people like John Parr, who, while I was at business school, I met him serendipitously by getting advice from two different mentors on literally opposite sides of the San Francisco Bay, all within 2 weeks, that said, if you want to meet people, it sounds like you're really developing this idea, and maybe you should see who else is doing it. So like there's nobody in San Francisco Bay at that time doing it. Or at least I couldn't find them. So it resonated like, well, yeah, so if I'm not finding them doing what I'm doing, then maybe I need to do something differently. And I started this meetup group in the San Jose area here called Sustainable Homesteading in the South Bay, which is still running, and it's up to like 250 members. But my very first one was an aquaponics how-to. And I'd just gotten my IBC tote from Sylvia Birdstein, right? Aquaponics source. And I'm not sponsored in any way. So got that, and I'm up there. I just got my cycles done. I'm presenting. I got a keynote. I had 14 people there and talking about how I know aquaponics. I've done the videos. I've done the calculations, and now I have my system. Well, John Parr's there, and he just got this humble way. And, of course, he'd been doing it for 4 years prior to that and doing it in a big way. He's got such a body of knowledge of fish is a lot of where it came from. And so many of the aquaponics farmers and folks in California and more, that's one of their first introductions, John, is getting fish. And he really knows his fish well. He also does classes on aquaponics and sustainable living. So that's what I did, is I started taking his classes. And I stopped. That was my only class in aquaponics. And
doing that while you had already set up your own system, so you were expanding your knowledge on that?
Correct. Yeah. While going to these classes with John, and I'm still in business school and still working at Apple. And so I decided I'd create a pirate produce. That was my business for me. And that's my little system. And I made a website, and the idea was I would have meetings and meetups and do backyard systems. And somebody actually found me on the internet and hired me to build a backyard system in Mountain View. And that was awesome. And I got paid for that skills as this pirate produce developed. And it's still fun. I'm building another system, the 500-gallon fish tank, which is like 6 feet deep and 3 feet wide. I buried it halfway at my house through this pirate produce adventure. And we got chickens, and we do homesteading. And last year we raised our own turkeys, which is something I did growing up in Colorado. We had 30 ducks that we took care of. Our garden was a 1/4 acre. I had a ride-on rototiller. It was awesome at 14. That's how I learned to drive. I digress.
So how did you get involved with SchoolGrown, and how did this project come alive for you through all this experience and dabbling with aquaponics and taking courses with John Parr? How did that evolve into SchoolGrown? Tell us what that's about.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So the story, we're right there at that moment, taking the classes, and at the second or so class I took, which were at John's house in Santa Cruz Hills. It was this cool 8-acre facility where he's got his system. So there was only 2 of us there. And John and I were sitting down on his couch. We were talking about greenhouse design. That was the class. And so he lifts up his laptop after going through all these things about greenhouse design, things you want to consider, elements. I've got it all figured out. He lifts it up, he opens up his SketchUp, and he's got, this is the perfect size greenhouse for a garden, school garden, to support itself through its own merits. And that was effectively the leaf greenhouse that we do now. That's what it's become, is for SchoolGrown, is this leaf greenhouse. But at that moment, it just resonated in such a powerful way. Hearing that story, you could see how it just was like, wow, that seems to fit in what I wanted to do. And it merged me back into the educational importance that I started with. I got diverted into commercial dreams and small business dreams. But this now was a new solution that blended those in a way filled with integrity.
So what issues do you feel that you all were basically resolving through this new LEAF program?
Great question. So the problems we were looking to solve were numerous. To start with, right off the front is the school gardens themselves, because that's where we're targeting. There's other opportunities. But the school garden itself, we know through my personal experiences, John's also a family man with kids that go to school, and we got friends, and it's obviously our interests. So we've seen school gardens at various states and perspectives. Common theme is that somewhere after 3 years-ish on average, they literally fall apart to either overgrown weeds or dirt or just out of neglect or out of favor. And so we wanted to address that because people put a lot of energy into putting a garden in place in the school because they know it's important and it makes a big impact on the learning and just the kids' environment. It completes the experience of why we're here and getting them ready for life, right? That ultimate goal for them. However, it's not expected to be part of the school program. That's why it takes this Herculean effort of time and investment and materials and community to come together to make it happen.
And that's why the weeds overtake it, because there isn't a commitment between the school seasons to actually take care of it. Is that correct?
That is one part of it. Absolutely, right? Summer, the best time to be in the garden, the most productive time is when teachers want to be on vacation and families want to be on vacation. Some people teach because they know they're going to get a summer vacation. That's awesome. I think teachers should. So that's just part of it, though. I mean, the other piece is the generational and cyclical aspect of it. If families who are participating now, a way to incorporate new families is different than when the garden first started, as it is when the garden's in progress and we're now tossing a baton, so to speak. Secondly is those teachers that signed up for it, because there's always teacher support. There has to be to make it work in a school. They are not compensated for, or they're not measured, as far as I can tell. I'd love to be wrong about this, but their measurement of their success is not based on the success of the garden in any way. So they're not compensated for it, is the consequence of that. They're doing this above and beyond their already overworked hours. It's literally on their personal time. So it sounds great and they love it, and I know they benefit. But even with all of those traits, you do it 3 to 4 years, things change in their demands, their actual demands, which they're measured on for their performance, become more and more each year too. And so their real goal is the teaching and the experience, and that's what they are measured on, of the learning of the students. And right now the garden's not part of that, even though we recognize the value of the garden in the school. What's the problem there? Well, you got to operate it, and a school cycle, as you pointed out, is not really truly aligned with a farm cycle, let alone a garden cycle. But a farm, the difference, it's a farm, it's not really a garden. So I don't want to blend it. The farm now, which is what the leaf is, produces food and has this additional learning factors built in around business and work ethic and entrepreneurship and community engagement. And so that, I think, would make it easier to tie in with the current objectives, because those are the objectives of the teachers. Great. So now we're just giving them a tool to achieve those objectives without the need to operate it. Mm-hmm. So this is SchoolGrown. We own these. We provide these to the schools and the communities we're working in at no cost. Well, it's oversimplified to say it's at no cost, right? Everybody knows that. There are costs, obviously, to build it. And the point being is that regardless of those costs, and we have a really good model of what we believe it looks like. And we've got a number of betas. We have a model, a working full-scale model in Half Moon Bay. That's been operating for 9 months now. John has another kind of beta model in the Santa Cruz area that's been operating for now 2 years. And we are getting the ground ready at San Lorenzo Valley High School in Felton, who is the first school to actually sign a lease with SchoolGrown, allowing us to build and operate the leaf greenhouse on their school property and for 3 years. So during that 3 years, we operate it with an employee. We're going to do some fundraising around this. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, at some point. Definitely. What that looks like. We sell it, so that revenue is to literally hire a person. That was one of the obligations that the school ultimately somehow had but didn't want in their mission, the typical standard goals of the school, to hire a gardener or a farmer, right? So this will build that in through the continued revenues. We like it to be the CSA to the families of those students, really truly engaging the community that it's closest to. But that's not the only story that can unfold from there. And a lot of that will depend on those communities. As we start out, each community's needs are differently. So this leaf greenhouse, as far as dealing the issues, you said, we started with the school garden, doing a productive school garden that can maintain itself without being a burden or a liability to the school, while providing all the benefits that they need to achieve the goals of an excellent educational experience.
You do that by basically creating a program that's sort of self-sustaining. Somehow there's money set aside to build and have the systems designed and built, but you have other people operating it besides the students and the teachers.
Correct. Yes. And that is key to what we're doing. So we build and design the leaf greenhouse. That's a John Parr design. We are so excited to be able to share it with these communities, get it into the hands of more people. That we did. And in order for it to work, we need a person there. So that's the service we provide, is we manage and train that employee who's really a part-time person. Part of the key designs is that we wanted to minimize the need for operations and maintenance to help the burden. Because now that we're shouldering that burden, of course we're going to optimize it. We're engineers and we're farmers. And the key to farmers is as lazy as possible, really. You enjoy the environment and nature that you're in. You don't want to be breaking your back.
Lazy food production, but smart food production.
Exactly.
And automated if you can.
Exactly. So this leaf greenhouse with one part-time person who could really see up to five, maybe more. We'll see the efficiencies of how well we dial things in. But I think about 5 greenhouses in their area. They check once a day. And then we partner with a community college who can then have an internship program where we have interns throughout the school year. And then during the summer, during the biggest time, these interns now become an excellent pool to get a job in the greenhouse for a summer before they head off to their next adventure, right? More college or their career. But now they're getting this really cool thing to have on their resume. That's how it operates. And that's us running it. So we're a service provider. We design and build, and we have the engineering, and we're doing research. That's built into our mission. And we provide this service, a farm service, essentially, a sustainable one that has the business built in. So that's how we're able to sustain it, is that we're selling the food. That production has value, and we think food has an extreme value to be produced and its value is extended by being produced in the places where people live. So that's the next objective and thing we're trying to solve. Not just the school garden, but now how do we influence and create a food system that addresses the key issues of transportation, antibiotic production? That's kind of a bigger picture, but more the distribution, right?
Grow it and impact the families and the students who are also, there to learn from it, and hopefully take that knowledge and that awareness back home and spread it into the community, right?
Yeah, that's a huge statement. And the impacts that it has is on the health and the family. We talk about bringing people to the table. If you have real ingredients, TED Talks chew on this series, which is on Netflix. Phenomenal stuff. Working on some blog entries on our website at SchoolGrown around these to promote them, because TED is known for the wonderful speakers.
There's so many issues to talk about. And
right.
So you've talked about the SchoolGrown business model, and you've talked about how it works. So far, how is this model working for you guys, and how long have you been operating it?
We've been operating officially since July. We filed for our business license as a public benefit corporation in California in July of 2014. So the Half Moon Bay site has been running. We started building it in August. We filled it in September. And honestly, up until this point, it's John and I and our families have been, we're living on our savings. We're doing it, but there's so much we've been doing it this long because things are really coming along as far as support and people understanding the model. The model itself, as you can imagine, is people aren't just really aware of this idea of a nonprofit leasing land from a school to provide an educational service while running a business effectively on that. But all of the school's providers of resources are a business that they buy from. They buy textbooks from a textbook company, right? They buy programs and kits and experiences and boxes of stuff from companies to do their classroom. This is just another kit you can buy that's run. It's like online videos where we're keeping them going. So it's different, but it's not unproven. So in Sunnyvale, there's another farm, which I'm on the board of, called Full Circle Farm. It's an 11-acre educational farm in Peterson Middle School, and it's awesome. And it grew from 2 baseball diamonds, and now it's got a farm stand and a CSA, and the nonprofit runs it. And they provide the education to the school where they integrate with the teachers. And so it's not unheard of, kind of important. But we've had to spend these last 2 years explaining to people who are very interested, right? You start off with the wham bam at no cost, that's exciting. And then, of course, brings skepticism because it sounds like one of those marketing TV marketers. And then we have to sit down and say, well, no, we really are genuine and there's integrity in this program. And it's really a simple request. We're giving you what you want, which is no obligation and no liability with all the benefits. Right? So let's work this out and we're going to go through it. And this is a long-term relationship. So we're minimum, let's just say at least 3 years. There could be something else then. So the excitement has been growing. We're well over 30 schools interested, including 5 universities in, I think we're up to 7 different states of people talking to us. And now we've got folks that are in conversation with us to go to other countries. It's just humbling how people engage with this story and the mission of SchoolGrown. And we're at this cusp right now. I mean, April's huge. And the fact that we ran into you and you got us onto this, you're putting us on your show. It's all lining up.
I literally found you guys the day before your first conference call. It was amazing. I'm like, I have to be on that call.
Awesome. Yeah. Next one's May 17th is our educators roundtable to just share and celebrate what work is being done by educators in sustainable agriculture around the world. So our 501c3, we just submitted for that. We're going to be fully federally tax deduction donation pretty soon here. And that's a big part of it. We're building the team. We're working on expanding our board. So that's conversations we're leading through Lions and Rotary and, really reaching out to these communities. I think one of your upcoming questions down here is, how do we scale this? How do we get this out to other communities and replicate
definitely.
it?
That's something that I want to ask. And I wanted to understand your business model and kind of how it works, understanding it as an organization. And I'm seeing you're blending it as a nonprofit with services that are included. So there's a business and there's a nonprofit side. And so it's an interesting model. And I know about social entrepreneurship, and I know that there is a way to do that. And I actually have been trying to do it myself, but I'm very curious about how it works.
Yeah, I'm on 3 boards of 3 nonprofits. So we mentioned Full Circle Farmer, Sustainable Community Gardens, SchoolGrown, and the Aquaponics Association. All 3 of them are nonprofit. And the key, though, is that there is no need to do something different to separate business from nonprofit. Nonprofits are businesses, period. They have management, they have workers, rules, objectives, and they need money to operate. Mm-hmm. That's a business. Mm-hmm. So all the difference between nonprofit and for-profit is what you do with the profit you make. Nonprofit doesn't mean you don't make a profit. Nonprofit is this blend a little bit because now we're doing public good. So education and the 501c3 rules are black and white. If you fit those rules and you're a nonprofit, that doesn't mean you can't make money.
Right. So it's just how do you make it self-sustaining?
Yeah. Yes. You provide something of value. So we do it doubly. So, and I've used this metaphor recently with somebody else, but I'm going to keep using it because I think it works. It was well received, which is the iPhone, right? As Apple sells it, the iPhone is not what they're selling. It's just a tool that allows somebody to express themselves in the way that they want to do it. And try to just summarize how many different ways you could use an iPhone. Apple articulates this really well. So moving right along, SchoolGrown, our leaf greenhouse is our iPhone. We are a developing platform that allows people to create these educational experiences, community building centers, local food production in a sustainable way that's saving water and resources, providing a couple jobs, giving the next generation a real job training. Regardless of what job you're going into, you need to know how to show up on time. You need to know that something you did this week is going to be something you have to follow up with next week. And watch over many weeks, the seed to sprout, to transplanting it to the raft, to got down the raft. Now you got to harvest it. You got to prepare it. You got to get it to somebody to eat it. And the school, because we're producing enough food, which is up to basically 1,000 heads of lettuce a week. And we're mixing in sprouts and carrots and beets and tomatoes and cucumbers and can be varied. We're not mixing those in. Speaking of being the community, it's just a platform. You can basically grow, what I'm trying to say is you can grow what you want. So a nice vegetable box every week for that community to buy into because they're going to buy the food anyways. And it's the same thing with like school cafeterias. That's something we get from schools. It's like, well, okay, so if we're not going to do the CSA, is it possible to get it to the cafeteria? Well, absolutely it's possible. And we're going to do it the exact same way you would buy from any other farm for farm to school. In fact, it's even easier because we're on their property. So every state has a threshold of what's called a micro level purchase, something along those lines. It's a micro purchase. And then there's medium purchase orders and large purchase orders, right? So below in California, any food order from the food services under $86,000 a year. So any school cafeteria, anybody who has a garden right now, start putting money into your garden by finding a way to set up an arrangement with your cafeteria, because you can use your farm to school money to go there. It only has to be an MOU. You don't have to do a competitive bid under this threshold.
What is an MOU?
Thank you for asking. An MOU is a memorandum of understanding. It's a low-level, simple contract of here's what I expect. Here's the parties involved, the cafeteria and the garden or school-grown. Here is what we are each obligated to do and what we're exchanging. So school-grown's growing food. Cafeteria is going to buy so much food as long as it is of these qualities, and these are the characteristics we want and we expect. And it's going to be at the market rate, because they're getting money for that. And often with the farm to school programs, there's reimbursements for participating and buying from local growers. So we're a small scale, right? In most states, the good portion of the food we're growing would be purchased by these minimum standards and supplementing the school's cafeteria, engaging the kids with not only did they grow it, they got to eat it in multiple ways. So whether it's at their family, at the school, or let's say we have an ambitious school, a high-performing school with a business curriculum in their school. Well, now we have a real business. And this also ties to FFA, by the way, which does have business requirements within their standards.
What is FFA?
It's Future Farmers of America. So it's a nationwide program, long time, right? Future Farmers. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's one of the things I've learned just through talking to people about this. The FFA has a requirement called a supervised agricultural experience, which over their 4-year track, they have to spend time with effectively a business that makes money. So tractor fixing is a common one, the animal husbandry where they end up selling the animal, right? Those are the big ones. And there's a few others that I'm still learning about. Well, the leaf fits right into that. So in these other programs where they are having the class support or the extracurricular class tracks that tie into these types of businesses can actually run it. And our employee, the leaf operator, will be more of a wingman. And as an organization, we'll apply as support so that they're selling it. And so that's where, we don't want it to seem like, well, if they're selling it, then they obviously, that's a different picture than if it's just us. So we want to find ways to, if there is money made like that, that there's resources that go where resources are put or where they come from. So, yeah. So if the people are interested in how to work it with FFA, I'd love to talk more about that and see how those things work and these other business programs. But effectively, they could decide, well, we're not going to sell it to CSA. We're not going to sell it to the cafeteria. We want to sell it to caterers. And so how do we market? How do they create a marketing plan and a business plan and actually sell to the caterers? In the meantime, the previous CSA program can go. We let people know, hey, it's winding down. We're sorry. Maybe by the way, the school in the next neighborhood does have a leaf greenhouse, and they just happen to have some open spots on their CSA program. There's the more network that we build up, it just extends that community aspect of it. Mm-hmm. Beyond our own neighborhoods, which is where it all starts. That's where we start with, is strengthening those neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. We get a lot of these neighborhoods rallying around the same network. Well, of course, remember, I'm the technology nerd guy. So I want to incorporate, and of course we need to incorporate into for some goals, some needs, the technology piece. So how do we connect them socially and monitor these systems in a way that they can look back and share results of changing dynamics of their systems and discuss that with a whole nother school in another region, right? Okay, so now we're in California. We got one ecosystem we're living in with this leaf, and now in Colorado, they got something different. Mm-hmm. And by having, say, just a simple, we don't have this yet, but this is kind of where we're headed, is have a projector screen in the greenhouse. You have your iPad, which is monitoring the levels and tying into the sensors that are there. And simultaneously, you engage in this interactive classroom where you can do Skypes to other schools, share your diagram side by side. So you're in 2 different states or countries, for instance, and you're looking at each other's stuff and you're looking at each other because we have the technology. So why not use it, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's the dream. that's what I think the potential of where we can go with this.
What is
Nice.
the vision that you see of aquaponics in the next 20 years?
That's more school-grown specific. I think it's going to be even bigger than that for aquaponics as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think I also never really truly answered all of your how's this business working? How do we maintain an organization? How are we going to achieve that vision in some ways, right? Because if you can't sustain yourselves and if we don't have the money, as we said, you can't obtain your vision.
Right. Well, I guess the goal is how do you sustain it as a nonprofit and a business that, how does it support itself and how does it reach its goals in education and the mission to produce food using less water and all that. If you could take us into one of the greenhouses and tell us what it looks like, what's growing, and kind of what happens on a daily basis, especially regarding the kids, the students.
Yeah. So it's a 30 by 60 greenhouse. It's wood framed. So we'll start from the outside. We can put 30 of these greenhouses on one football field, and that's not the outside of the lines. That's the play boundary of a football field, 30 of these greenhouses. So we're going to walk in from the west side, and that's going to be the main entrance. As we're looking at it, it's not a perfectly triangular house. It's the south roof is longer. It's a big south roof. It's 1,200 square feet, and we cover that roof with a material called Lumo from soliculture. And this is a Santa Cruz scientist and company, now they're in manufacturing, to design a greenhouse glass that was both beneficial to the plants and produced solar electricity.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah, so the key to the beneficial to the plants is the colors of the light. So this roof, our south roof, right, as you're looking at it, is essentially this pinky salmon-y, it's that if you see hydroponics and indoor lighting and those things, there's those blue-red lights, right? Mm-hmm. That combination is the optimal wavelength for the plants. So that's the color you see on the roof, is that blend of blue-red. Fun fact, the reason we see green is because that's the part of the light spectrum, the visible light spectrum, that the plants don't want. So they're resisting it. They're literally bouncing off those wavelengths. Ha! And that's the opposite of the blue-red spectrum. So these panels, this Lumo, it filters those green out before they even get into the greenhouse. But more importantly, it bounces that around the glass, and that's what captures it in photovoltaic cells. So it's producing 4 kilowatt hours of power. Got to throw that one in there for our greenhouses. We're walking in. It's flat. We open the door, and we go in, and to the left, you would see 2 right now blue tanks that are 4 feet wide and 3 feet high. And they're going to nurture fish. On your right, you would see a table that is 4 feet wide, 20-ish feet. So from wherever you're at in the door to that wall, the south wall, is just this table, and so a seating table. Underneath some shelving, you can do your seating there. We'll have a couple coat racks hanging on the door so people can have backpacks or things of that nature that they need to put somewhere. And that's that west wall. So then in front of us, we have a little bit of space. This is where, because we want to be able to gather as we walk in around the seating table and in between the fish tanks and the grow beds. So the grow beds start all the way at the south wall. So you can't walk on that side between the south wall and the farthest grow bed. They're one and the same, which is part of the structural design, which keeps our resources down and makes it also a great structurally designed as well. So then from that wall, 4 4-foot wide, what are called deep water culture troughs. So these are troughs of water. The whole thing is up at 3 feet. So it's right at about your waist. Along the side is like a raised bed garden where we can do various finishes. Right now we have some redwood fence, just standard redwood fence panels on it. So it looks nice. It's a little higher so kids don't fall in. And this also then goes to the labor part. We don't have to bend over now when we harvest and when we seed and when we work in the garden. So from the wall to there, we got 4 feet wide, these 1 foot deep troughs going in front of us for 46 feet. Yeah, down to the end of the greenhouse. And there's a little bit of walkway at the end of the greenhouse between the edge of that is troughs and the, east wall.
So is the whole system deep water culture or is it a hybrid?
It is a hybrid. So then after those 4 troughs, thank you for asking, it was 1 more bed. But it's 3 feet wide, and it's a dead-end wicking bed. And it's going to be a little bit higher, so it'll be 8 inches higher than the deep water culture. And that's to maintain one consistent water level across all of our media beds, deep water culture and the media bed. This makes for, it's basically the whole system is the sump.
Wow.
Right. Except for, well, there's the fish tank. So the fish tank system is, our design incorporates the decoupling aspects to where the fish system can deal with its own wastes and run without the plant system for an extended period of time. We're shooting for at least 2 weeks. So if for some reason there's water flow issues, and this is an off-the-grid solution which runs on our combined fish tank and biodigester, runs on a 20-watt air pump. So that 20-watt air pump could go for a couple weeks, like recirculating 450 gallons of water an hour on those 20 watts.
So the whole system is off-grid?
Yes. Yeah, we produce significantly more electricity than the greenhouse will need, even when it's supplied with all the pumps, additional lighting, additional fans, and running those electronics. We'll still have overhead of electricity with those solar culture panels on our roof.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
So we're really excited that they're with us on this adventure. Obviously, it just really it's literally the icing on the cake. Not only are we doing this food stuff and creating education, but we're producing electricity.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, that is really cool. How do you heat the water in the greenhouse when it gets cooler, if you need to at all?
Well, I mean, and that's going to depend on where we're at. So here in California, we are in Northern California, I should say, we have fairly consistent, but we do get cold winters.
Okay.
It can get cold enough in the water to kill tilapia. So part of it is what you choose. So we choose appropriate fish. We do sturgeon, catfish, Sacramento perch. We're looking, natives, koi to some degree, but fish that can naturally live in these conditions. So that's the first kind of design choice. The aspects that we have to deal with the thermal conditions inside the greenhouse are essentially taking the air from the top of the greenhouse. And so remember, our beds are up off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So they're 1 foot deep, but they're 3 feet up. Well, the top of it's 3 feet up. So that's 2 feet of airspace underneath our troughs.
So you got some air insulation almost.
Sort of, but even better. More than that is that we're going to take the air from the top of the greenhouse, which in the winter, even with limited sunlight, gets hot, 80 degrees. So in even cold areas, you can effectively design your greenhouse with cold sinks and small fans that pull the warmest air from the top of the greenhouse and places it somewhere in a thermal battery, which in our case, the bed, it's both the water and the ground.
Right.
So we're going in between. So we're kind of filling that sandwich up with some really good warm air, and it impacts both pieces, the water on top of it and the ground below it.
So you're recirculating the hot air that rises, and you're bringing it back down to the ground. And so you're using tubes. What are you using?
Yeah, it'd be air ducts.
Okay.
So
And you have a fan. Is it you have a passive fan, or is it
no,
all
you
electrical?
have to. It is electrical because you have to be able to move the air, where it's naturally wanting to be.
Right.
So we do have to move it. But again, it's a small. It's going to be a 20 watt ish. It's not going to be like an air pump. It's not kilowatts. We're looking at a small 8-inch fan that can move some air. So pretty low key.
And do you have anything to heat the water itself as well, like the heat exchanger to something, or?
Not right now.
Okay. You probably don't need it.
We haven't needed it.
Yeah.
So our water did get into the low 60s, maybe high 50s this last winter. It was an untypically sunny winter here in California, right? You've all heard. We only had like 2 rains come through in the entire winter, and they were very short. So we got lots of sun, and it was really warm. Yeah, so we haven't had to really deal with the coldness here.
Right.
But that will change as we go into other communities, and these are some of the designs that we're starting with, and that we have others in addition to that would be used in those climates, which I'm not really well versed on right now because I haven't needed to be.
Yeah, and so what are you growing currently in those greenhouses, or in that?
A number of lettuces, some reds, some greens, some curly leaves. I have the fun lettuces, kale, dinosaur and curly leaf, asparagus, peppers, a water chestnut. We got a couple plants that we honestly don't know what they are. John and I, with all this momentum, and we've done a lot of traveling for this, we're not really growing what we want to be growing and as we want to be growing it right now, just to be honest. But we do have these lettuces, carrots and beets, and we take it. It feeds us. It feeds our volunteers. We're not selling anything there yet, but that's part of our building. We're building our core because we know this is going to fly, And that's the next step to help make this work is like I said earlier, we need that. We're working on the board recruitment. We need a good board and more board. And we need to get some core funds in that do fund some administrative work. And our documenting team, a few dozen volunteers and at least a core dozen that have really been there almost weekly, if not more than once a week, helping us get these things going and working with writing and creativity, as well as the systems and seating and all this stuff. So we're so grateful, all the help that we've been getting and the people that are helping us. So I want to make sure I don't forget to mention them. But the reality is, if we're not getting paid, right, back to the whole business thing, if we're not getting paid, we can't do this for very long.
Right.
That's the way the world works. So yeah, we're looking for funding. This new greenhouse that's going into the school in San Lorenzo Valley, this is our first this is the actual show. This is the first show. So stay tuned. We're getting pictures up. There's videos coming up. We're going to have a crowdfunding campaign around there. We're starting our CSA sales within the next month. And for that community, we also do sponsorships. Most of our sponsorships have been through in-kind donations. All the lumber for that one is donated by Scarborough Lumber. The Mountain Feed and Farm Supply Store is just an amazing group of community, and they're supplying us with anything that they have on their shelves, and they do all kinds of homesteading goodness, fun stuff. So we're really excited to have their support and the support of the community, and so that's coming. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. We're looking for the right people who also want to contribute in ways that can help us build that. As we extend that, we are going into other communities. We're talking to folks in Connecticut, in Denver, you're in New Mexico. There's some folks up north. We're going to Alaska in June. And so the organization will build, and we want to create these regional hubs. There's some open source talks. We definitely want to share our designs. We want the education, the research to get out. We'll have some other announcements in May around those efforts. So, check SchoolGrown.com in May if this gets out before then. So that's a tough one as far as how do we scale and replicate, right? Because obviously in the permaculture world, there's I just got exposed to the open source ecology.
Oh, I love open source ecology.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah,
it's
amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And there's the idealist in me wants to have the leaf as something you could download from some folks like them, or alcoholisagas.com. He's also got some awesome patents that he basically gives out for $1 on how to create alcohol as a gas, to run your tractors and your cars, and another way to distribute the resource building to the communities, right? Mm-hmm. That was that one problem. We want to get food where people live. We waste 1/3 of our food every day. That's a UN report. 1/3 of all food produced every day goes to waste. Look at what's going back with the busboys at the restaurants. Everyone out here listening, mm-hmm. Just look, it's everywhere. And a lot of it also, that's just part of it. Then there's also the food that gets wasted because it's being transported literally halfway around the world. And so 1/3 of all fossil fuels are consumed by agriculture. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the distribution, it also is the fertilizers and a number of other aspects, packaging, that are derived from petroleum. When we look at that and we have this opportunity in this really well thought out, and it has been a community effort. John Parr spearheaded this whole idea, but it's not an uncommon idea. But by carrying that flag and getting the right people, and I'm glad I'm considered one of those right people to be part of it and keep it going. It's there. So promoting the story, finding donors that want to contribute in any way, whether it's teaching, if it's speaking about it, if it's pulling together your team, it's a crowdfunding thing. This is a community building effort. So at some point, we estimate through the production of the greenhouse of each leaf, it will supply us the revenue to pay that part-time person some, 15 hours a week per greenhouse to 20 hours a week and some supplies, and contribute back to the organization a little bit every year. And somewhere around 10 is our self-sustaining moment, where that pays for our leadership, it pays for our administration, it pays for our infrastructure and the leaves themselves. And after that point, we will very likely, if it goes as planned, right? And these are plans, which mm-hmm. plans are just meant to go in different directions, mm-hmm. and it's getting bigger. So at that somewhere around 10 mark, 10 leaves, we will essentially have our own funds. We would be then have a foundation that can supply the majority of the funds to actually build every next leaf in every other community and school that we go to, just based on the merits of the actual concept and the farm and the produce itself. So we need help from those first 10, and it has to be the crowdfunding. And even when we do have those funds, we want to continue doing the crowdfunding. So in our crowdfunding campaign, we're partnering with barnraiser.us. They're a crowdfunding platform that only does local food businesses. And they're giving us some great support, and they're rolling out these new pages where an organization like us that has multiple projects, because that's one of the drawbacks of crowdfunding. You can only do one project on most platforms. Well, we're doing so many projects because we want to be that infrastructure piece. We are that infrastructure piece. So we're one of the infrastructures we put in is how to crowdfund for your community. And it all shows this cumulative impact when we get multiple communities participating and succeeding in this. Not only do we see that one project got funded, now we're going to see this project got funded and this community is awesome. By the way, these other 10 did as well. So combined, SchoolGrown has made the project's grown this big. And so the larger impact, people want to be part of something that's meaningful and, is going to last beyond their years, leave legacy. So this is a legacy that I think people are really going to continue to want to be a part of and see come together. So the first 10 are going to be a little more work. In the crowdfunding, we want to do some other business things. As I mentioned earlier, I'm done some work here for a couple years now with nonprofits and really working at the misconception that nonprofits can't make money. Because the thing is if they don't make money, they fail. They won't get grant money. They won't get foundation money. There's the 7-year dip. Talk to nonprofits that have been around for us. 7 years, you either make it or you die. And a lot of that's because the original money that's provided for most grants opportunities and philanthropy and foundations, if it's not charity, is just to get you started. Because what you do is you go to these people and you say, I got this great idea and I need this much money to get it going. And they're going to say, great, it looks like it is a great idea, which means you're going to be able to do this without us in a year or two. So if you can't prove that you can do it without the grant money as a nonprofit, then you fail because they're not going to keep giving you money unless you can make your own money.
Right. So you have to find a way to monetize and create enough profit that your investment is paid for and it can continue to sustain itself. So do you guys have multiple plans for how to create income streams through the LEAF program?
Oh, yeah. But I want to go back onto this, what we were just talking about, which is to create the profit, you have to solve a specific unique problem in a unique new way. And when we look at local agriculture, we talked about food waste, right? I work at this other nonprofit. Full Circle Farm is a wonderful farm. It really is, like most farms, barely getting by. And so one of the things we run into, though, because of that nonprofit stigma, as it's a charity, which not all nonprofits are charities, it gets abused a little bit, which makes it even scrape by even harder. And so the people that are actually working there, because there's a small staff that gets paid from that business of a farm. And if that business doesn't work, well, then they don't get paid or they get worried about their jobs. So, and this is true for a lot of people, but for food in particular, what I've noticed is that what this creates is because food has a limited shelf life. Plants have there's a window of opportunity here, right? Even from flower to fruit to harvest to get it to your table. And then through those processes where this 30% food waste comes in. Well, what's happening is I see these food banks around the neighborhood, the community, and I won't call any of them out because this is just a system problem. They're not the problem. The specific people aren't the problem. But those food banks need donations, right? They're giving away donated food, and which in some cases through food drives and those things is fresh food and it's new food, but often it's not. It's day-old food or food that wasn't able to be sold, and that's called surplus. Okay, well that surplus, guess what? It's not surplus. So I look at this through business now, and I say, what that means is they didn't sell the food. The farm, the business, didn't sell the food right. Well, we'd still have a market of people who need food and can't afford it. And let's match up the other. So who's going to pay for it? Well, there's this also market of people who've made it well and want to give back to their communities. And one of the ways to give back to your communities is to donate food, right? Or support these food programs. Why not connect those two before the food goes bad? Not after. not after it's waste or surplus. It's no, let's get a program in place where we can sell food to people who need it by having somebody else who wants to pay for underprivileged people to pay for it, right? So EBT is essentially a nationwide way to do that. The food stamp program.
Uh-huh.
I forget what EBT stands for, but the EBTs, right? So that's people getting money. Now go shop, which means you get to shop and stand in line just like everybody else stands in line, regardless of how you got your money. But at the food bank, it's different. You're going to go stand in line, and hopefully they're going to have, how much food they have, they divvy it out to as many people as they can. Well, in our crowdfunding campaign, for instance, we're going to have a donation kind of thing or whatever, the pledge, that's what they are, the pledge, of $500 or $1,000. At those two levels, you'll either feed 5 families for a month or 10 families for a month. And then on the people who are going to get those, they're going to chip in $10 to get a raffle ticket in that community. Because that's the other piece is even though you're broke, you can still buy a cup of coffee. So let's turn that cup of coffee into now a couple plates of vegetables and really get some nutrition and the ability to start picking yourself up. Because if you don't have good nutrition, you can't pick yourself up. So, and that's idealistic, I know, but I love getting on my soapboxes. Thank you for the platform. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do differently, right, is that we really come to the problem. And as we engage those students, you talked about how do we get this educational thing going, is like we're a platform. So we're not there to teach aquaponics. It's just that this aquaponics in this leaf greenhouse gives us the chance to teach kids how to make decisions, how to be responsible for themselves, how to think about others, how they use their resources. So we'll know exactly how much water is going into that system. We'll know the food. We'll know, we can talk about those things, and they can think about those things, and then we challenge them. Now, how are you going to solve those things? And so I can't wait. Like I said, I can't wait to get into the hands of more communities and more students to see what they do with it.
What are they getting out of this?
I wish I had more stories. As I mentioned, we're just starting to hit the runway and get off the ground. So we don't have a full-time school engagement. We've done some field trips. And the field trips we have, the kids just love it, and they're super excited by it. They like getting their hands in the media. I love talking about soil versus dirt, right? And then we get to talk about microbes. Mm-hmm. So those are a lot of the younger kids that I've had, like first grade through third grade. The people we do tours every month, and most of those are adults, and they're super excited about it. We have all kinds of ways we want to. One thing I'm rolling out next week, I have a longtime artist and social justice teacher friend in the San Jose area, Adrian Avila, and he's part of the Silicon Valley Debug group. And they do education and art and media and journalism. So they have a magazine, they have a local TV show, local radio show. They go speak at conferences. They start businesses and photographies for like a photography business. And Adrian has a screen printing business, and he goes into the continuation school every Thursday. And he teaches these kids who are, they're at risk. They no longer are at the standard public school so for a variety of reasons, many of which are gang related and just signs of a really rough situation and some bad choices. So he's trying to reach out to him. He's an amazing guy, just great attitude. He's kind of spry little guy, and, he's got a good bounce to in his step, but he's also down to earth, and he does great art. And who doesn't love great art, especially graffiti, right? And so he's doing this, and he's saying, here's how you can take this and turn it into a business. So what we're going to do next week is we're going to engage them. SchoolGrown's going to be a trial customer. And our customer, because we got this logo, and I drew it, and we put it together, and it's worked for us. But we want to, like you said, we want to have these schools. We want to have somebody else. We want to get more people involved and have the story so I can answer your question next time on what they're doing when they're engaging with SchoolGrown in the greenhouse and aquaponics. Yeah. So this is just going to be a logo, though. So it's still engaging in SchoolGrown. I think it's going to be a great exercise. I'm going to Skype in with them, give them a 20 minutes on here's the business. And I'm looking for a logo. And they effectively have 2 class periods to make one. And we're going to pick the top 5 or 6 and, just get them some small iTunes gift cards or something as a thank you. But have it be a real experience, and then use the logos that they produce. And that could be another thing that happens in other communities. And just how do we, keep that community and that symbol of what the community is reflecting the actual communities that it's participating in.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and it sounds like you guys are working on getting it going and expanding. And basically, Gary said that you were the fundraising guru, and we talked a little bit about how you guys have been doing that for SchoolGrown. But is there a best way to go about it, about how to fundraise for projects like this around the country or start programs?
Well, I mean, there's so many tools out there, and on the folks that I've learned from is probably the resources to go with. And I'll summarize our fundraising plan, but effectively Slow Money. If people are familiar with Slow Money, that's a great community, and they have some resources, but more importantly are drawing people together on how to invest and create local businesses, especially around food. So I encourage people to reach out to those. You'll also find, other business incubators and green incubators. Find your support and your mentors, because they'll guide you through those things. And that's why I'm the expert, is I rely on other people. So our fundraising for the leaves is really 3 models: is the pre-sales of the food. So if you have something you're selling, or if you want a leaf in your community, we need a team together that can do this. A social butterfly that can help pull people together and knows everybody in the community, that can get sponsorships, for instance. So whether it's in-kind donations like lumber from the lumber store, or it's a local business who wants their logo on the greenhouse, we'll have a recognition plaque for sponsors of the greenhouse. Also the first harvest sponsors. So anybody who's signs up for the first CSA or purchases one of those Feed a Family pledges are going to be listed on the first harvest plaque of the greenhouse. Yeah, so we want to do a sales, and effectively, once the school's engaged and ready to go, there'll be a simple little 3x5 card that we'll mail them, and they can hand it out to interested kids and families, and then they can go in and register. And that's one simple way to get the CSA started. And then the crowdfunding campaign, and we want to raise an equal amount from sponsors, both in kind donations and money. We are going after grants. We've written a number of them, and we haven't gotten one yet. We keep applying, and we're looking for those opportunities. On our website, under the school's administration page, is a little form where we would love suggestions. So if there is a grant or a funding opportunity that you believe would work, whether it's your community specifically or just for us in general, you just submit it, adds it to our spreadsheet. So as we're building the team of people that are helping us do more grant writing, we now have a centralized place to organize the opportunities and keep track and share the information that we're doing. So that's part of what we're building. Yeah, so pre-sales of the CSA or some other arrangement that buys the produce, right? A pre-sale of some kind. The crowdfunding campaign, crowdfunding's great. Again, barn raiser for those local food people. The Aquaponics Association, as a board member, I should also mention that they have a micro grant program. So every quarter, local farms and members and people who are doing stuff can apply. I believe right now it is members only can apply for like $1,000 grant that we give out, and get involved with the Aquaponics Association. Speaking of, the Tour de Tanks is this month, the weekend before and after Earth Day. You can see maps of people's farms that are letting people come see them. So partner up with like I got that advice and how I met John Parr, right? Find out who else is doing it in your community and start pulling those people together. And if SchoolGrown can be a part of it, we would love to be. And we have more resources, and our community is growing, and it's growing in multiple areas. So we're building the networks and the tools necessary to communicate and spread the word and educate each other and learn from each other. So yeah, sign up for our newsletter, like us on Facebook. But again, find who's out there, who's doing it. We're one of them. And so we are here. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Yeah, I really want my community to be able to connect with you guys and also exchange ideas so that we can spread this around the country and hopefully the world, and get more programs like this going in different schools. And we can sustain programs like this and, exchange information. So
super excited. We really appreciate your support and interest, and look forward to what the future will bring us.
Do you have any final tips for people who are interested in starting aquaponics systems at their local schools?
Be really clear first about what you want to accomplish by having it there. If your goal is to create a specific type of system, great. If your goal is to create a program that is going to feed your neighborhood or not be a burden or do these things, then you have to design it in a way to meet those goals. The goal of building aquaponics itself is not enough. That's the tool. Your goals have to be something else that aquaponics is going to solve or help you demonstrate or do. So if it is just a demonstration, for instance, like how to build them and these things, the small scales, those ones that you can pull apart and do, are great for that. And know going into that this classroom size one, where the classroom's closed during the summer, is going to be taken apart. And which means now you have a new problem to solve, which is a great learning experience and is going to add to it, as long as you know that going into it. So yeah, know what you're trying to accomplish first, and then design the aquaponics system that fits to meet those goals.
Thank you for listening to the Visionary Aquaponics podcast. To learn more about aquaponics, please visit our website at www.visionaryaquaponics.com. There you'll find more strategies, tips, and tricks to get you started in your aquaponics journey.